Welcome to the deep dive. Today we have something pretty unique. We're exploring a source material that's part interview, part psychological map.
It's really compelling stuff.
We are dissecting a conversation called DJ Johnny Bad Dog, an unmasking interview. It was conducted by his wife, Cheri, and it's paired with these incredible analytical summaries.
And those summaries are key. They translate what seem like simple answers into really decades of context.
Yeah, exactly.
We're looking at two layers at once, You've got Johnny's direct, personal, sometimes very guarded answers, but then there's this professional analysis that reveals the why.
The why behind the words.
Exactly. Why those specific words were chosen, what emotional history they're pointing to, and I think most importantly, what the answers show about the health and the unique rhythm of their relationship.
Our mission today is precisely that. It's like emotional archaeology. We're not just looking at a quote on a page.
No, not at all.
We're interested in the narrative structure that frames that quote. How does this Q&A, which was designed by his partner, move him from talking about external perception
We'll see him
all the way to his deepest internal fears? And then it culminates in this profound emotional revelation that just explains his entire worldview.
And what's so critical to understand here is that for some individuals, especially those who might struggle with abstract emotional language, very simple, very concrete words can carry immense weight.
Right.
So we're connecting Johnny's specific responses, his choice of a particular date, his definition of what safety is, his really surprising definition of independence, to the huge implications of identity, trauma, and fundamental transformation.
That's right. We're unpacking all these layers to reveal those foundational aha moments, the moments that show how finding the right partner, the right context can fundamentally anchor and really transform a person's identity.
It's a deep dive about connecting the dots.
It is. Connecting the dots between a man's past scars and his present purpose. So let's jump right in. Part 1. Identity, perception, and the definition of safety.
Let's do it.
So the interview kicks off right where most people start, with external perception. Cheri asks him, "What's the one thing you wish people understood about you right away?" And his answer is so immediate, almost defensive.
It is defensive. He says, "Don't judge a book by its cover. There's more to me than just the way I look."
That first statement, what does that tell you psychologically?
Well, it's a massive indicator. It confirms that his primary mode of interacting with the world has been, it's been defensive. If your immediate right out of the gate instinct is to warn people against superficial judgment, it means you have been consistently mislabeled. You've been categorized or minimized based purely on your outward appearance, your mannerisms, or maybe the persona you project.
That DJ Johnny Bad Dog cover.
Precisely. That's the cover he's talking about. And it suggests, really, a profound exhaustion with it all. He's preemptively fighting a narrative about who he must be before the conversation has even started.
Why spend that energy right at the start? On a warning.
Because for him, it's not just a polite request. It's a required boundary for entry. The analysis that comes with the interview confirms this. It reflects a lifetime spent trying to overcome assumptions.
A lifetime.
Think about the psychological cost of that effort. Every single new interaction, every new person he meets, it starts with a deficit. It starts with a need to prove you are more complex than the packaging.
I can't imagine how tiring that must be.
It creates this deep cumulative fatigue. So his statement is really a requirement for intimacy. He's saying, if you, the listener, only see the surface, if you only see the cover, you don't get access to the actual human being inside.
It also really highlights the tension, doesn't it? The tension between his public persona, the DJ, the performer, and his very private need for deep recognition.
Absolutely. The persona is a shield. It's functional, but it's also a wall. And if he has to spend his whole life operating behind that shield, seeking real connection becomes incredibly difficult.
Which makes the very next question so impactful. It moves from that external perception to a deep internal feeling. Cheri asks him about his earliest memory of feeling truly safe.
And his answer is incredibly specific. It's not abstract at all. He ties safety to a physical attribute.
He says, "The day I met my wife, Cheri, it made me feel happy because she was short like me."
It's a fascinating answer because we tend to define safety in these big abstract terms, right? Financial safety, emotional protection, things like that.
Right, a secure job or a safe neighborhood.
For Johnny, safety is immediately and viscerally tied to physical recognition. It's about belonging and sameness. The analysis points this out very clearly. Meeting Cheri provided instant comfort because he felt matched instead of overshadowed.
Okay, let's unpack that a little more. Why is safety tied specifically to size? I mean, on the surface, that could sound, limiting as a metric for foundational security.
It might sound limiting, I get that, but if we look deeper at the psychological context, it makes perfect sense. Imagine if you've spent a lifetime, maybe since you were a kid, feeling physically out of step with the world.
Like the world wasn't built for you.
Exactly. Like the
Right.
world is literally built for people taller than you. You'd be constantly spending emotional and physical energy just adjusting, compensating.
I've never thought of it that way.
So when you meet someone who mirrors your physical reality, who operates at the same perceived stature, it's like an instant release of all that stored energy. All that effort just evaporates.
So it's not really about the height itself. It's about the immediate relief from that pressure of feeling different.
Precisely. It's an immediate signal of a shared reality. He didn't have to adjust. He found a teammate who was operating on the same physical frequency, and that signals we can face the world together as equals. He wouldn't have to constantly look up or feel diminished.
Wow. So that initial point of belonging is, for him, the deepest form of safety he could even articulate.
It is, and it makes that connection between a belonging and physical sameness so powerful, which leads us right into the next question about facing reality.
This one touches on the challenges of perception in any long-term relationship. She asks him, what is something you believed for years that you now know wasn't true?
And his first response is just classic defiant Johnny.
Nobody ever fucking fooled me.
Right. He prides himself on being astute, on seeing things as they are. But then he offers this profound exception, the one thing he admits he didn't know for years.
Except that the love of my life is autistic. That I didn't know.
For someone whose identity really hinges on not being fooled, on seeing things clearly, admitting this level of blindness about a core aspect of his wife's identity, it's huge.
So how significant is that admission, really?
Oh, it's monumental. It's monumental because it forces a total reevaluation of their shared history. The analysis stresses this point. This discovery reframed everything for him, but without changing his essential love for her.
So it didn't change his feelings, but it changed his understanding of why they did things the way they did.
Exactly. It implies that for years he was observing all these specific behaviors, communication styles, reactions, and he was probably interpreting them through a neurotypical lens.
Seeing them as just quirks or personality traits.
Or misunderstandings, even. Discovering the neurological reality behind it all provided the necessary context. It's a shift in perception from, why did you do that, to, that is a consequence of how your brain processes information.
And that's so crucial for any long-term intimacy, isn't it? It replaces potential frustration with clarity and empathy.
It does. It allowed him to understand her, and by extension to understand their shared dynamic on a much deeper level.
And then we get this immediate real-time glimpse into their exact dynamic. Cheri interjects in the notes to clarify something.
Yeah, this part is amazing. She clarifies that she had to jump in and answer for him because, in her words, he was staring at the wall with the blankest look.
This is their partnership in action.
It's the operational definition of their partnership. The summary describes it beautifully. His freeze, your rescue, your shared humor. It shows that when Johnny freezes up, maybe under the weight of an abstract or an overwhelming emotional question.
Like one that requires deep, retrospective self-analysis.
Right. Cheri steps in. She provides the context, the support, the missing piece. They function as a complete communication unit.
So where one person's system stalls, the other's just automatically compensates.
It's a deep, collaborative understanding. They don't just love each other. They've developed this extremely specific, low-friction communication system that's customized to his needs and her neurotype.
She knows his internal pause. She knows it signals he's overwhelmed.
And she interprets that pause for the external world, which allows the conversation to keep going. It just confirms that his safety is rooted not just in her presence, but in her active participation in managing his vulnerabilities.
Let's move into part 2 then, which is all about how Johnny defines his own growth and success. This is where, for me, things get really fascinating.
I'd agree.
When Cheri asks him about the best thing he's ever done for his own future, his answer just shifts the entire paradigm of personal achievement. It moves it completely away from self-interest.
It's a stunning answer, especially for our modern culture, which so often preaches this idea of self-maximization. His answer is profoundly relational.
He says, I got my driver's license. It gave me freedom and independence and the ability to be helpful in my household. I took the burden off of my wife.
And that's the key phrase right there. I took the burden off of my wife.
It's where it gets really interesting because he immediately reframes this classic symbol of personal achievement as an act of relational contribution. Most people would define a driver's license as pure individual freedom, the ability to go anywhere I want, whenever I want.
But he doesn't. He defines his independence specifically in terms of becoming a more reliable, more contributing partner.
We have to analyze this idea that Johnny equates his personal growth directly with contribution and utility. What does that say about his self-worth?
It speaks to a foundational shift in how he values himself. In his previous life, the one he calls his shallow life, he likely lacked direction. He probably didn't have that sense of being needed.
So now his pride is explicitly rooted in the concrete, tangible act of lightening his wife's load.
Exactly. Progress for him is measured by his usefulness to their shared life. He's prioritizing the well-being of the collective of their household over purely individual goals.
But I have to ask, doesn't that run the risk of tying his entire self-worth into his functionality? I mean, what happens if circumstances change and he can no longer be that contributing force?
That's a crucial question, and the potential fragility is real. But the analysis suggests that for him, gaining that capacity, the driver's license, it was less about the physical act of driving itself.
And more about something else.
It was more about successfully embodying the identity of a responsible adult partner. That identity, once he's achieved it, is permanent, regardless of any temporary setbacks. The shift is from relying on others to being reliable for others.
So that sense of utility is his new stable identity.
It is. It's an enormous psychological leap. He's saying, the best thing I did for me was to make our shared life easier. That loyalty, that commitment to the partnership is absolute.
And the very next answer just reinforces this foundational role Cheri plays in his life. She asks him what truth about himself he only discovered because of her.
His response here is maybe the most explicit statement of transformation in the entire interview. He's so direct.
He says, I wouldn't have grown without you. I would be in the basement suite back in Calgary, going nowhere, living a shallow life, but now I have a life and I'm with you and I take care.
That establishes Cheri not just as his partner, but as the absolute pivot point. She is the existential boundary marker between his stalled life and his purposeful life.
The analysis in the summary really underscores that stark contrast he paints. The basement suite going nowhere. That's such a chilling metaphor.
It is. It's a metaphor for a stagnant, limited existence, probably one dominated by shame or total lack of direction. His current life, by contrast, is purposeful. It's him acknowledging that their love wasn't the goal of his life. It was the catalyst for his self-actualization.
Let's focus on that phrase, a shallow life. What do you think that really implies about his life before he met her?
A shallow life, in this context, I think it implies an existence without real meaning, without significant interpersonal depth. It means his interactions were all surface level, probably focused on just getting by, on survival.
No long-term planning.
Certainly not.
Right.
And definitely lacking the profound sense of responsibility that he now cherishes. He was just passing time. Cheri provided the framework, the structure, and the need that demanded he step up and live a life with consequence.
And that final phrase, I take care, is the culmination of that entire transformation. It's not just a description, it feels like a claim.
Exactly. It's the pinnacle of his self-definition in this new era of his life. It is his way of claiming an active adult identity that's rooted in responsibility and direction. He's not just passively receiving care anymore, he is an active agent of it.
It confirms that Cheri didn't just stabilize him.
No, she expanded his entire horizon by giving him a context in which that responsibility could be shared and meaningful. The growth isn't incidental, it's existential. He is defining himself by his function within their unit.
This moves us deeper into his internal landscape. Part 3 explores his vulnerabilities and his approach to the future.
And this is where it gets very raw.
It does. When Cheri asks about the fear he wishes he didn't have to carry, the answer is so stark and so simple. He just says, abandonment, being alone.
That is a direct, unfiltered answer, and it immediately signals a historical wound. The analysis is very clear on this. This is an old, deep fear. It's rooted in an upbringing where he likely didn't receive consistent emotional support or protection.
A fear born of instability.
Completely. And this raises that essential distinction between the fear of abandonment and, say, choosing solitude. A lot of people value time alone.
Right, but he fears being left behind.
The distinction is crucial. Fearing abandonment speaks to a lack of core emotional security, a failure of reliability somewhere early in his life. He isn't worried about being bored, he's terrified of being cut off from his source of safety.
So this fear suggests that his current groundedness is utterly reliant on her presence, on his anchor.
It is. If that anchor Cheri were removed, those old feelings of vulnerability and lack of protection would come rushing back instantly. Understanding this root fear informs every effort he makes to contribute and commit.
It makes his desire for today and for utility so much clearer. He's constantly working to ensure he is essential and therefore not left behind.
Precisely. Now let's shift to a moment that really highlights their successful coping mechanism for all this heaviness, their humor.
Yes. Cheri asks what he's proud of that he doesn't talk about enough. His core answer is, you, my wife Cheri.
And this is where we get that beautiful, immediate comedic exchange that shows us how they operate.
Cheri teases him right away. She says, you don't talk about me enough. And Johnny, using his very literal, often defensive logic, fires back.
Who am I going to talk to about you?
You. It's genuinely funny, and you have to appreciate the humor before you dissect it.
Yeah.
Her response, Johnny, my love, the only fucking thing we ever talk about is me, and then his little laugh. The summary calls it a little old man wheeze laugh. It just pure gold.
It's the ultimate acknowledgement of a mutual truth between them. Let's analyze this exchange as a perfect illustration of their natural comedic dynamic.
What is that dynamic doing for them?
Well, it's foundational to their intimacy. Johnny offers a completely sincere emotional answer. He is genuinely proud of her, and he's acknowledging her centrality in his life.
But she immediately processes that sincerity through teasing.
Which is their established safe rhythm. His defense is rooted in pure literalism. Of course he can't talk to her about her. And once he realizes the truth in her exaggerated claim, his laugh signals this mutual acceptance. They don't need grand, serious declarations of love. Their intimacy is right there in that shared, slightly absurd dialogue that validates both his sincerity and their established relational truth. It's brilliant.
Okay. Shifting to his future orientation, Cheri asks him to title the chapter of life he's in right now. The thought process he reveals is so critical, especially the moment he self-corrects.
Yes, it provides a rare look into his internal editing system. He cycles through all these options out loud.
He starts with, tough question, puff of air hanging by a thread, but then immediately, no, not hanging by a thread, that's the wrong word.
And then he offers, revolution, evaluation, tomorrow, living one day at a time.
He defaults to this feeling of overwhelm, hanging by a thread, but he instantly pulls himself back. He recognizes that that negative framing doesn't accurately capture the reality of his current effort.
That self-correction is a sign of immense psychological maturity. And it's a maturity that's been achieved, I would argue, through the safety of this relationship. What's fascinating here is his active agency.
He could have just settled for the easy answer.
He could have. He could have settled for the stressful, easier to articulate answer, but he corrected himself. And his final choices: revolution, signifying transformation; evaluation, meaning active reflection; and tomorrow, representing slow, deliberate rebuilding. They show significant psychological growth.
And honesty about his current mental state.
Complete honesty. He's acknowledging that he's in a period of intense, active change, not passive suffering. The fact that he possesses the awareness to choose revolution over defeat is the measure of his progress.
This leads beautifully into the question about how his brain works. Cheri asks what people get wrong about it, and his response is just total silence.
Followed by an apology. He says, I've never really asked. I really don't know how to answer that. I'm sorry.
This is a profound moment. It touches on this concept of, what is it, meta-awareness?
Meta-awareness. Let's pause to define that for a second. Meta-awareness is essentially the ability to analyze your own thinking and perception. It's the ability to think about how you think and how others perceive that thinking.
So he's not just struggling to answer the question, he's struggling with the ability to even ask that question of himself in the first place.
Exactly. The analysis in the summary connects this absence of developed meta-awareness to his past environments. His apology isn't a failure, it's an honest truth.
He was never encouraged to develop that language.
Or perhaps even allowed to. He was focused entirely on external actions, on utility, on survival. If you spend your childhood focused on just getting by and avoiding judgment, you don't really develop the capacity for navel-gazing.
You focus on surviving the interaction, not reflecting on the dynamics of it later.
Precisely. When you don't receive that emotional protection and encouragement, The self-talk required for that kind of abstract analysis just never forms. So he apologizes because he genuinely feels like he's failed the task. But really, he's just articulated the truth of a self that was forced to focus outward on utility rather than inward on abstract analysis.
We see this same challenge with abstraction come up again when Cheri asks for a waking dream, a long-held aspiration. He initially confuses it with literal sleep dreams.
This just confirms that pattern. If the language is abstract, like the word dream, he defaults to the most literal biological function. Dream means sleeping.
So Cheri gently redirects him. She asks about the dreams he has when he's awake, his aspirations, and his answer is, LOL, while I've been to Disneyland, haha.
Again, on the surface, it seems like a simple answer, but why Disneyland? It's not some grand ambition like climbing Everest or becoming a millionaire. It's a specific, completed physical memory.
And that's the key.
It is. The analysis explains why Disneyland was his answer. It represents a dream that has already been lived. It was a peak moment in his life that happened because Cheri took him. For someone whose path was marked by stagnation and unmet needs, abstract aspirations can feel risky, maybe even unattainable.
So his aspirations are rooted in gratitude.
Gratitude and nostalgia for that shared, successful experience. It proves that his highest aspiration isn't some future fantasy, but the successful repetition of the secure, shared reality they have already built.
His pride is rooted in the tangible proof of their shared life. He doesn't need to dream of what could be. He celebrates what is and what has been achieved together.
It's a very pragmatic, very grounded approach to aspiration.
And finally, she asks him what he wants the rest of his life to feel like. His answer is just one word, but it's such a powerful, emotionally direct conclusion.
He just says, today.
What does today signify for him? It feels like it summarizes his entire state of being.
It is a declaration of sufficiency. It's a declaration of groundedness. He is signaling that the life he has right now, that is enough. He desires continuation, reliability, connection. He is actively rejecting the external pressure to constantly be striving for more or better.
After all those years of feeling adrift, of fighting judgment and lacking security, the highest form of aspiration is just consistency.
Absolutely. Today means the structure is sound, the safety is present, and his utility is confirmed. His goal is not dramatic change. It is the powerful, quiet repetition of the security he finally found with Cheri.
And that brings us to the final part of the interview, the part that reveals the moments that both defined him and almost destroyed him, the anchor and the scar.
This is where everything comes together.
First, the question about the single moment in their relationship that changed him the most.
And the precision of his memory is so telling. He doesn't hesitate for a second. He offers an immediate cognitive anchor.
He says, August 10th, 2013, we got married.
The fact that he gives the exact date instantly shows that this isn't just a happy memory for him. It is the definitive marker of his adult timeline.
The analysis calls it the anchor point of his entire adult identity. It says this is the moment everything transitioned from drifting to belonging.
It's a line drawn in the sand. It separates the shallow, directionless past from the purposeful, anchored present. For him, the wedding wasn't just ceremonial, it was existential. It embedded this commitment into his core sense of self, replacing whatever trauma or uncertainty defined his previous existence.
And now we turn to the final question, the one that truly unmasks him and brings the trauma of his past into the safe light of their present relationship.
If you could go back and talk to little you, what would you tell him?
His answer is so disarming at first. To an uninformed listener, it could easily sound like a joke or some kind of deflection. He says, ha ha giggle, look both ways before crossing.
Right. And if we were just reading the raw transcript without any context, we might just dismiss this as simple, dark humor. But this is the point where the analytical context provided by Cheri becomes absolutely crucial.
We have to dive deep into why this is not a joke.
This is the narrative climax of the entire interview. The analysis details the devastating context. Look both ways before crossing refers directly to a life-altering trauma that occurred on Friday, June 14th, 1990.
The newspaper headline at the time was, Boy Critical Following Accident. Johnny, at just 9 years old, was in a severe accident on his bicycle with a motorcycle.
We need to really understand the psychological weight of this. That single piece of advice, look both ways before crossing, it would have saved his 9-year-old life, or at the very least prevented the catastrophic physical and emotional consequences.
So that moment, it didn't just injure him, it fundamentally split his life in half.
A trauma split of that magnitude changes absolutely everything. It changes his body, introducing physical limitations and pain that he carries to this day. It shatters his foundational sense of safety in the world. It tells him at 9 years old that random, terrible events can strike, and he is not protected.
It informs his entire worldview.
It explains everything. It explains why he seeks control, why utility is so important to his identity, and why that fear of abandonment is so profound. The analysis is definitive. This is the root trauma. He wasn't being cute or deflecting. His brain instantly went back to the one singular moment that nearly killed him and ended his childhood innocence.
That accident is the ultimate scar he carries. It's the source of the vulnerability he has spent his entire adult life trying to mask or overcome.
And we can connect this scar right back to the very first answer he gave in the interview.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly. He is carrying the invisible long-term consequences of that 1990 accident every single day. When he tells people not to judge him on his appearance, he's implicitly asking them to see the profound vulnerability and the altered physical reality caused by that event.
And his constant striving for utility, getting the driver's license to be useful, it becomes a countermeasure against that feeling of being broken or incapable that a trauma like that can instill.
His life's work has been to prove the utility of the self that was so fundamentally wounded all those years ago.
So why tell Cheri this truth now in this specific interview? And why choose such a seemingly trivial phrase to convey the deepest trauma of his life?
Because that is the ultimate proof of the intimacy and the security she provides. He chose to articulate this profound truth, the single most critical message he would send back through time in the only language that was available to him.
The literal command that would have prevented the disaster.
Yes. But the key, the absolute key, is that he felt safe enough to say it, knowing she knew. She already knew the memory and the scar that shaped him. This wasn't an act of information disclosure.
It was a confirmation of a shared history.
It was an act of profound vulnerability that was predicated on absolute trust. He didn't have to explain the headline or the physical injuries or the years of psychological fallout. The interview becomes a map of psychological resolution. The answers start with that defensive warning to the world, but they conclude with the unmasking of the deepest wound to the only person who holds his trust completely.
What an extraordinary journey this has been. This was so much more than a fun Q&A. It was, like we said at the start, an act of emotional archaeology. It proved the incredible depth hidden behind such simple, surface answers.
It really did. It revealed a man whose identity is entirely bound up in the security and the purposeful contribution that his foundational relationship provides.
So for a final synthesis, what does this all mean?
I think the interview shows the transformative power of a secure environment. The power of safety represented entirely by Cheri is what's necessary to unlock and articulate deep, decades-old trauma, which is symbolized by that 1990 accident. Johnny's progress is defined entirely by his transition from fighting judgment and fearing abandonment to achieving purposeful contribution and emotional grounding within the relationship he describes as his anchor.
And the beauty of it all is that his ultimate aspiration isn't some abstract goal he has to chase. It's simply today. He has found contentment in the reliable, present reality she helped him build.
It's a profound testament to the fact that real transformation requires not just love, but the specific structure and acceptance that validates every part of your history, including, and maybe especially, the deepest scars.
So for you, our listener, a final provocative thought to take with you. If your life had chapters, what single piece of advice from your present self would you send back to the moment your childhood ended? And what truth about yourself is only safe to articulate when you know the other person already understands the full weight of the scar that defines you? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.